Aware webinar, Issues We Face as We Mature. Some housekeeping items. This is a Zoom webinar, so participants cannot be seen or heard, so you're off the hook. Only the speakers are visible and can be heard. If you have questions, there is a box in the lower left-hand corner called Q&A. You can type in a question in the box, and I will read the questions to the participants at the end of the presentation. Now it is my privilege to say that this program is being hosted by the North Carolina Reading Service, and I am pleased to introduce our president, Greg Suggs, who will be talking a little bit about the Reading Service.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And I would like to welcome everyone, as Jana just said, and especially would like to, first of all, thank our event sponsor, the Orchard Group at Morgan Stanley, for helping to make this possible. So let me start off by saying, if you or someone in your family is dealing with vision issues, this is going to be a very informative 1 hour, and we're very glad to have you. But before we kick off our speakers, I wanted to talk a little bit about the North Carolina Reading Service. Maybe you're not familiar with this, and so I just wanted to give you some background. The NC Reading Service is a nonprofit. It was established to serve the blind and print impaired community in 1983, and their mission is to connect people who are blind and print impaired to each other, their communities and families, by delivering news, information, entertainment, and special features using the latest in technology. So if you tune into the Reading Service or go on their website, you can enjoy live broadcasts of newspapers like the News and Observer or the USA Today, as well as a number of other newspapers in North Carolina, like the New Bern Sun Journal, the Greenville Daily Reflector, and down in Wilmington, you can enjoy the Wilmington Star News. If you like magazines, you can enjoy Time, Vanity Fair, Reader's Digest, and many, many more. The service also offers special programming like the North Carolina Symphony, Salute a Veteran Every Day, and Legal Matters, just to name a few. And for the Hispanic community, we also broadcast Que Pasa entirely in Spanish. So there's something for everyone, and they do this amazingly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of this is made possible by over 150 dedicated volunteers who come to the studio and they read, they form connections. Also, just, it's not uncommon to see a local broadcast celebrity volunteering their services. Who knows, maybe one day you would like to become a reader. The North Carolina Reading Service, it's an amazing organization that plays an important role in the North Carolina community. To learn more, you can visit online at ncreadingservice.org. Okay, so thank you for that. And at this time, I wanted to move on to the next part of the agenda. And I'd like to invite Shannon Craven to join us. Shannon is a financial consultant with the Orchard Group at Morgan Stanley, our sponsors today. And we really appreciate them stepping up to sponsor this event and have asked Shannon to share some information about their services. So, Shannon?
Thank you so much, Greg. My name is Shannon Craven. I'm a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley, and I'm a member of the Orchid Group. And I'm going to share my screen here and show you our team. I've recently joined with the Orchid Group and understand that we've been supporting the North Carolina Reading Service for quite some time, and it seems like such a wonderful organization, and I'm so happy to be here. Just to give you a little idea of what we do as financial advisors, we work with clients to improve their financial lives by managing their investments, helping them with retirement planning and their financial goals. I won't hold you up. I really want to move on to this wonderful event. We're very proud to be sponsoring it. So I just wanted to introduce myself, introduce the team, and I'm going to turn it back over to Greg. Thanks so much, Greg.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And again, we appreciate your sponsorship today. This will be the shortest part of the speaking. I am also one of the sponsors, so I get a chance to share a sentence or two about what I do when I'm not hosting webinars. So my day job is I am the owner-operator of G-Suggs Insurance Agency, and we are a local independent insurance agency helping families and businesses with their insurance needs. So simple enough. So I want to get to the real meat of our program at this point in time. And as we mentioned earlier, we have two great speakers. And first up, it is my privilege to introduce Omar Moeddine. And I will tell you, Omar has a lot of letters behind his name, so he can explain exactly what they mean. But what I can tell you is Omar earned his graduate degree in occupational therapy and public health from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And Omar works at the Duke Eye Center with Vision Rehabilitation and Performance, where he sees clients with age-related and acute onset vision impairment. He addresses how these changes in vision affect occupational performance challenges in the activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living, including being in the community, work accessibility, functional mobility, and driving safety. So all things that are very important to us. So at this point, Omar, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Greg, and thank you to Janet and of course the Orchid Group for sponsoring this event. And it's an honor for me to be here and speaking to your group today. It's something that I've done before and I love to do again to help support North Carolina Reading Service and kind of spread the word and the gospel of low vision rehabilitation. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. And if Shannon or you or Greg could just tell me if you're able to see my presentation full screen before I begin.
We've got it.
All right, perfect. So again, my name is Omar, and I'm one of the occupational therapists at the Duke Eye Center within the Vision Rehabilitation and Performance Division. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about low vision rehabilitation, and kind of my objectives for today's talk are to increase knowledge of the field of low vision rehab, and that includes kind of defining what is low vision, reviewing the common conditions that are seen with low vision and the functional complaints that are associated with them, going over the different provider types and people that you'll meet in the vision rehab world, and then talk about the services and treatments that are offered. I'd also like to talk about and educate people about the basic strategies that people can implement to live with low vision, the type of devices that are out there available, modifications they can make in their own personal lives to make life a little bit easier, and all the resources that they have available to help really maximize their functional, their function and independence and safety in life. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit more about assistive technology because, you know, things are always changing and there's so many new gadgets and tools and apps coming out. So it's hard to kind of keep up with the latest and greatest, but I'll try to give you a brief snapshot of kind of like where we are today in 2021 when it comes to vision rehab and all the assistive technologies available. So what is low vision? Oftentimes people don't seek out low vision services because they don't know if they qualify or not. And a lot of people want to put numbers on them. They want to say that you're only considered low vision if your visual acuity is worse than 20/70, or if your visual acuity is worse than 20/40. But that doesn't take into account people who may have perfect 20/20 vision, but they've lost peripheral vision, so they have tunnel vision, which we know can be quite detrimental to someone's ability to walk around and get around safely. So the way we think about low vision is not having enough vision to do whatever it is that you need to do. And that's, of course, after you've exhausted all the possibilities of using glasses or contact lenses, the medications that your doctors may prescribe, or treatments or surgeries that your doctor may do for you. So after all is said and done, if you're still struggling to see, to do daily activities, you are considered low vision. When I talk about these numbers, I don't really like to go off the numbers because the numbers really don't tell me anything about that person, because someone who's been 20 over 200 vision for their entire life, they have adapted and they're doing quite well and they're able to do what they need to do. But someone who maybe 20 over 40 but only recently lost vision may be struggling as they haven't learned those tools and adaptations yet. We often hear about these terms total blindness and legal blindness, and just understand that low vision and blindness is a spectrum. But legal blindness is just a term, a definition, so to speak, which is defined as having a visual field less than 20 degrees or your visual acuity being worse than 20 over 200 in your better seeing eye. And if you meet that criteria, then you may qualify for maybe certain Social Security programs such as disability, long-term, short-term disability, the state social services, vocational rehab, schooling, but it really doesn't tell me anything about the person. It's just a criteria to qualify for different programs. And then total blindness is when someone has absolute blindness where they're not even able to make out light or shapes or form. But believe it or not, there is actually less totally blind people in the world than you may realize. Low vision is far more common. So right now we think about, when it comes to the US population, that about maybe 3% of the population has low vision. And then of that, 0.8% may be considered totally blind. So 3% is roughly 9 million, but a lot of times people do not go to the doctor, so we do not have accurate numbers. So this estimate could be anywhere between 9 and 20 million. And the thing that we need to be very mindful of is that these numbers are projected to double, if not triple, in the next 30 years. So by 2050, we may be looking at 9% of the population, or 20 plus million people with vision loss and low vision here in the US. So the common visual conditions that I see in my clinic and are considered in low vision rehab are, of course, going to be macular degeneration, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy. So those are the top three. And then, of course, we've got cataract, some genetic conditions such as Stargardt's, retinitis pigmentosa, and retinopathy of prematurity. However, not all low vision conditions are chronic or age-related. Some are more acute, or what that means is that it can be quite quick with the onset, and it's typically strokes, brain tumors, different brain injuries such as concussion, and Parkinsonian type diseases can all lead to vision problems. So whereas I don't treat the actual functional diseases, what we do treat is the functional complaints. So whether you have macular degeneration or glaucoma, or you've just had a stroke that's caused vision loss, vision rehab is not there to address the cause of the vision loss, but the symptoms associated. So when I talk about symptoms and functional complaints, it's things such as I'm having trouble reading price tags or menus. I'm having trouble watching television or seeing people's faces. I don't know who's waving to me across the street or from across the church. Needing more lighting, being bothered by glare or bright sources of light, which may make your vision worse. Having trouble writing, which would then have an impact on your ability to write out checks and manage your finances. Getting around safely, so bumping into things or tripping or falling. Something as simple as just dining and being able to see the food on your plate. Oftentimes people with low vision may struggle to not only see the food on their plate, but make sure that they have food coming from their plate, off their plate and into their mouth. And sometimes they'll bring that fork to their mouth and they go, oh, there's nothing here. We call that taking an empty bite. Grooming and self-care, so seeing well enough to do your makeup or shaving. Medication management, so dropping and losing pills, being able to identify your medications correctly so you can take them correctly as the doctor recommends. Picking out clothing and telling the difference between colors, participating in leisure activities such as playing cards or going golfing. So these are all just a kind of a brief list of things that someone with low vision may deal with. So if this sounds like you, or if this sounds like a family member and what you've heard them talk to you about or complain about, then it would be a good indicator that you or that loved one may have low vision. So when it comes to vision rehabilitation, it's a multidisciplinary service. It's not just one provider out there. but we help people who have recently lost vision, who are blind or have low vision, to continue to live independently and maintain a good quality of life and be as safe as possible through the use of different technologies, assistive devices, and what we call compensatory techniques, or we can just call them strategies. Oftentimes you'll also hear about this group of people who are out there doing vision therapy. That's different from low vision rehabilitation therapy. Vision therapy is more about eye exercises and different things for people with binocular dysfunction, and that really is a root of eye muscle problems, but not low vision. And those are prescribed by neurobehavioral optometrists, but not what we provide at the Duke Eye Center. So vision rehab is made up of a ton of team members, and I'll just go through this list quickly. So you got your ophthalmologist that diagnose and treat eye conditions. You've got your low vision optometrist who prescribe glasses and contact lenses and write letters of referrals and accommodations as needed. For either work or school. You've got your optical technicians or ophthalmic technicians and assistants who would be the ones at the eye doctor who do all your vision testing and workup. You've got your occupational therapists, such as myself, who we teach those compensatory techniques, and we provide device recommendations and training, resource referrals, teach sighted guide, make recommendations for work and school accommodations, and address all of those functional complaints that just went over. We also have social workers at the Eye Center, but then also within the state to help people get plugged into resources and coordinate care. We also have counselors because we know with vision loss, it can have a significant impact on your well-being and your mental health. So depression it often goes hand in hand with vision loss as people learn to adjust and cope. So it's very important that we plug people into those resources if they're having a difficult time adjusting. We've got orientation mobility specialists, who are the specialists who help teach others how to get around safely, whether that's using a sight cane or some type of guide animal. We've, of course, got device vendors or trainers who would be the ones to sell you and show you how to use some of the different devices that we'll talk about later in the presentation. And then we've got vision rehab teachers who often work for state and nonprofit agencies, and they teach independent living skills. So this is just a quick snapshot of all the different team members who you may find within the vision rehab world. And so now we're going to kind of get into the good stuff. So what is it that we actually do with vision rehab? So we're going to kind of lift this veil of mystery and teach you that it's really not rocket science, and adapting to vision loss does not really require anything too fancy. And it's quite simple. So the first thing that we always want to do is add proper lighting and manage glare. So at the Eye Center, what I do with all my patients is to do a customized lighting evaluation to find what type of light helps them see their very best, and then make recommendations for lamps and bulbs and flashlights and the brightness of it, the color temperature, the light appearance, and of course, where you want to position those light sources to help manage glare. If you are sensitive to glare, or you have some type of neurological condition which makes you very sensitive to light, there are different type of sunglasses such as blue light blockers or FL41s that help you manage that light sensitivity or that sensitivity to glare. And so making sure that the right type of sunglasses are recommended to you, and then the right color which is recommended to you, and how they may help differently at nighttime versus daytime, or if you're doing computer work and things of that nature. The second thing that we want to do is add contrast. So contrast is a $100 word, but it's actually quite simple when you break it down. It means it's easier to see your white rice on a black plate. It's harder to see your white rice on a white plate. So opposite colors are easier to see. And for those of you who are following along in my presentation, I'm going to throw up a few pictures to kind of illustrate this point. So here we've got this kitchen with beige cabinets, a beige wall. The dishwasher is also a beige color. The mat underneath the sink is beige. The appliances like the microwave and the sink are all stainless steel. So everything is light in color. And then of course the mugs and plates that we find in the cabinet are also light in color. So by modifying the environment to add contrast, so if I hit to this next slide, you'll see by just adding darker hardware on the cabinets, you're actually able to see where the cabinet pulls are to open that cabinet. By seeing where that mat is, you know where to stand. Now all of a sudden the dishwasher stands out to you more clearly. With the darker countertop, we can locate and find that microwave more easily. And so adding a little bit of contrast can go a long way. One of the things that are commonly impacted by these low vision conditions are what we call contrast sensitivity, but if you want to think about it in terms of color sensitivity, it's essentially the same thing. When it comes to writing and getting around, contrast is going to continue to play a huge role. So we already talked about a black plate, but think about a black faceplate over your outlets and switches. So we've got, typically white outlets or white switches on top of white faceplates on top of white walls, and they're very difficult to see, and especially if you're trying to go and plug something in. We've also got a white, if you have a bathroom with a white tile surround and a white tub and a white floor, when you step in and out, there's no contrast to figure out where you should hold on to a grab bar or where you should put that wet foot so you may not fall or slip. And then, of course, we got writing guides. And anyone can tell you with low vision that pencil is not their friend. They would much rather write with a Sharpie or a bold black marker because they can actually read back what they've written down. So the next strategy we want to implement is decreasing clutter. So when it comes to clutter, no matter if you have a lot of treasures or belongings or you're more minimalist, organization is the most important thing. The less we rely on our vision, the more we tend to rely on our memory and our mental map of where things are. And so we always use the same adage of there's a place for everything and for everything a place. Once you've established your system, kind of maintain it and make sure if anyone comes into your home that they don't move your things around, especially if you're already oriented and familiar with where the coffee table is and where the coffee mugs are. And then, of course, we want to avoid busy backgrounds and patterns, which would make things more challenging. So I've got a picture here with two cutting boards. One's got a crazy pattern on it, and one's just a solid, simple black cutting board. It would be much more challenging to see what you're cutting up on the pattern cutting board. All right. Our next strategy we would want to implement is to make things larger. And so the first thing that you can do is you can get some large print items. So they've got the big telephones with the big buttons and numbers on them. They've got large print clocks and large print address books, large print keyboards. And so this is just a small sampling of a few large print items, but trust me that there are far more out there. You just got to look for them. Now, when things don't come large, then we're going to have to enlarge them somehow. So this is when we talk about magnifiers, which would bend an image essentially to make it appear larger. And so we've got our conventional magnifiers, and a part of my job is to help recommend the appropriate strength and power and help educate people about what it is that they need to know about magnifier selection. And while there's a lot that goes into magnifier selection, the one thing that most people don't understand is that the strength and the size are related. Believe it or not, the stronger the magnifier is, the smaller the window becomes. And so that's a common misunderstanding that people have when they go to purchase a magnifier. They often spend their money on that big page magnifier or the biggest magnifier in the store because they think that bigger is better. But it ends up being a waste of money and time because the stronger the magnifier is, the smaller it's going to be, which can become quite frustrating for many people because if you're reading through such a small window, you may be only able to read one word, if not one letter at a time. And in that case, we may want people to consider and move to what we call an electronic video magnifier, or what's more commonly referred to as a CCTV. These don't use optical magnification, but digital magnification. They have cameras and screens, and whatever the camera sees is projected up on the screen. And then that camera would then digitally zoom in and zoom out, kind of like you take a picture on like a smartphone. And so these devices have large fields of view. They have brightness control. Some of them allow you to change the contrast or the color of what you're looking at underneath it. And then some of them can even do what we call optical character recognition or text-to-speech, which means they would take a picture of that document or that book or that newspaper and then read it out loud to you. Now, these electronic magnifiers come in different shapes and sizes and varieties. So, kind of working with you on your goals to figure out, if you wanted a electronic magnifier, whether it's for work or school or in the community, say you want electronic magnifier while you're in the grocery store to help read labels, we would educate you on the different types out there and the differences between the portables and the desktop versions and kind of the pros and cons between all of them and help you meet your goals. The next thing we want to do is make things accessible. So unfortunately, when people make devices and products, they're not always thinking about the visually impaired community, which is not great, considering that, like I said, right now it's about 3% of the population, but that number is going to grow. And so they are excluding a big chunk of people from being able to use computers and cell phones. And so we can make things more accessible. So what I do is I get into people's phones and I make sure I go through their settings and try to make things as large as possible, make sure if they have some type of voiceover function or narrator function where things can be read aloud to them, that we would enable that and train them on how to use it, change the contrast or the coloring of that. And then for computers, there's tons of great software out there like Zoom Text or JAWS that would either magnify your computer screen and what's on it or read things aloud to you. And then we want to make things audible. So when we can't rely on our vision as much as we used to, we can still rely on our good sense of hearing, which is a great way of learning and identifying things. So they make talking watches and clocks, talking glucose meters, talking medication readers, such as the Script Talk service. Of course, we got the North Carolina Reader Service. Document scanners where you would put a piece of mail on the scanner and it would read it aloud to you using that text-to-speech technology. There's liquid level indicators. I kind of think about them as pouring alarms. So if you ever try pouring a drink and you start spilling over, it's a little gadget that sits inside your cup, and when the liquid hits it, it starts beeping or alarming before the liquid starts pouring over, so you know when to stop pouring. So there's tons of different audible or talking products out there. All right, next we want to consider adaptive products where, maybe these products were not meant specifically for the visually impaired community in mind, but they certainly help. So these are things that can be used without the use of sight. So no-cut gloves to keep yourself from hurting yourself while you're chopping up vegetables. You've got needle threaders and machines to draw up your insulin that would not require the use of sight. Eye drop guides so you don't miss your eyeball when you go to put that eye drop in. High contrast devices and specialty golf balls that are high contrast and reflective, making them more visible if golf is your thing. So those are just a few different ideas when it comes to adaptive products, but there's tons more out there on the market. And then lastly, one of my main jobs or one of my main duties as a part of my role or my job is to educate folks on the available resources and services out there. And so I'm just a small part of the vision rehab field. And so there are state social services. You're going to hear about Division of Services for the Blind later when Ms. Spite speaks. If someone is a veteran, they may qualify for what they call the Blind Rehab Outpatient Clinic and their services through the VA. Of course, we've got our vendors that we rely on to sell the technologies, such as Quintax and Magnified Life and Carolina Low Vision and the Community Low Vision Center, which is just a few around here in the state. We've, of course, got the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, which provide either large print or audible books. We've got our fabulous North Carolina Radio Reading Service. We've got other options such as Bookshare and NFB Newsline. We've got other home-based low vision occupational therapy services out there in the state. We've got local support groups such as Vision Insights Connect. We've got different for-profits and nonprofits such as Equalize and Envision Services. which may provide teachers for the visually impaired, orientation and mobility training, cortical visual impairment, teachers for the hard of hearing and deaf. iShine Foundation, which is a local nonprofit that I run that helps put on fun recreational activities every month for kids who are low vision to get out there and be active and network and make friends. We've got other local and national nonprofits that may actually donate CCTVs and different devices to those in need. We've got local groups such as, again, Vision Insights Connect, which is here in Durham, and then a special shout out to our Vision Resource Center folks out in Fayetteville. I understand that they're on the call today and all the fabulous work that they do. And then if people are still vocationally active or of an age where they're not qualified for Social Security yet or retirement and they still want to be employed, we have LCI, or formerly LC Industries, Industries of the Blind, IOB, and then IFB Solutions. And then other educational resources that they can listen to on their own in their own time to educate themselves, such as Ears for Eyes or Hadley. And again, this is just a small snapshot of what's available, but this is a few examples of low vision resources and services that people would be made aware of. All right, so now we're going to kind of shift our speech into assistive technologies. And when it comes to assistive technologies, it really spans the gamut. There's an array. So we're talking about anything from as simple as a free app available on a smartphone all the way to a implanted device. So something free, something very expensive, very complicated. So we're going to start off by talking about the easy stuff. So when it comes to low vision and blindness, what I will say, and you've probably heard me say it before, is that the best thing to ever happen to the visually impaired community in the last 10 to 15 years is the advent of the smartphone, because it is everything. It's not just your phone, it's your way to check the weather, check the time, have things read to you, connect with people. And so there is a lot of apps available out there, and by and large, many of them are free and designed either for or by people with visual impairments. And so we've got magnifier apps that would allow someone to turn their iPhone or Android smartphone into one of those portable CCTVs at no cost. Of course, you have to have a pretty steady hand to hold it, but it essentially will allow you to do the same thing of making things larger, better contrast. So here's a good example of how contrast can make things more challenging for people. So I've got the Zatarans box, and the instructions and things are printed with white lettering on an orange background. And so I would then be able to take that and manipulate it and change the contrast to where everything is now black and white, which is the best combination when it comes to contrast. So it's actually visible and readable by someone with low vision. We've got color and currency identifying apps. So if you have a hard time telling apart your navy pants from your black pants, or telling apart a $5 bill from a $50 bill, there are apps that would out loud tell you what color or currency or denomination that bill is. We've got apps out there that would offer object recognition, meaning you would take a picture of something and then you would either get a human or automated response saying what it is. So these are just a few things, and this is all using kind of artificial intelligence technologies or what we call machine learning technologies. So that's really interesting and fantastic that, you know, AI is kind of the future of everything, but we were actually utilizing artificial intelligence for the blind and visually impaired community to help them lead more meaningful, functional lives. And then we've got, again, it's OCR, but text-to-speech is the layman's term. So devices or apps, that do text-to-speech that would allow you to scan a document and have it read out loud to you, read labels off of things to you. Seeing AI is a common or popular one, and Vision AI is kind of like the dupe for Android that would allow you to read text, identify products by scanning the barcodes, describe scenes to you in currency, identify colors, and some of them even can identify handwriting with the caveat of if that person's handwriting is legible enough to begin with. All right, and then we've got apps that would read books aloud to you. So with Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, their companion app would be Bard Mobile to listen to their resources. There's Dolphin Easy Reader and Capti, which would allow you to download a book into that app and be read aloud to you. But even the Kindle app may have text-to-speech capabilities depending on what platform or device you're using to read or use the Kindle app on. All right, and then kind of the last kind of group of apps that are out there are what we call remote assistants. And so remote assistance apps are when you use an app to call a sighted helper. And so on the other end of that call is a person who would then have access to your back camera on your smartphone and describe what they're seeing. So they'll tell you to hold your camera up or down or left and right to help you set the thermostat, make sure you've set the oven correctly, make sure that your shoes are matching, your outfit is coordinated. If you've dropped something on the floor, they may be able to help find something for you. This is a great service. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, such as Be My Eyes. And, people may think that all these technologies are fantastic and you can do everything with them, but nothing quite can replace the level of detail vision that the human eyes can afford. And so I do educate people about these apps because even though you may be completely independent with other apps may not be able to help identify things such as expiration dates, which are either embossed or imprinted into products. And so you really need to have good level of detail to pick up on an expiration date. And when it comes to food safety, if you think about all these other apps I've shown you, none of them would be able to tell whether you've got a little bit of mold or something growing in that buffalo chicken dip from 2 days ago, or if that lettuce is looking a little bit wilted or brown. So having another set of human eyes available through your smartphone when either your friends or family members are not available, or perhaps you live alone, it's great to have access then to a sighted helper through the means of just a simple app on your phone. All right, and then while this is not considered an app, all these smartphones come with digital voice assistants. So I've listed them here. I dare not say their names out loud because everyone's devices will start going off in their homes. But, these are things that are already built into your devices that can look up information for you, tell you the time, tell you the weather. And with Alexa, you can even tell Alexa to tune into the North Carolina Reading Service for you. So you wouldn't have to get on a computer and log in and listen. All right, so some other assistive technologies that may help someone with low vision would be something called a bioptic telescope. So we talked about magnifiers, and when it comes to telescopes, everyone thinks like binoculars, but there's actually something called a bioptic telescope, which is a telescope that is mounted to a pair of glasses, and it'll help you see things far away, such as television. In most states, they may allow the use of a bioptic to help with driving. Of course, you would have to qualify and go through a considerable amount of training and behind the wheel evaluation to qualify. But for some folks, it may mean the difference of being legal to drive again, whereas they may have been told they were not legal to drive. So you still have to have vision better than 20/200, and you have to be able to look at this telescope and see at least 20/70 or better. And then, of course, you have to make sure that you have an adequate amount of visual field to qualify. But it is an option for some folks. And just because it was designed for driving does not mean it's only for driving. People will use this for all sorts of things to see at a distance, whether that's going to church and seeing the teacher in the front of the classroom, whether it's being out there in the community and identifying, where a bathroom is, or seeing who that person is finally across the street from you, who's waving at you, whose face you can't make out. So lots of different applications for a bioptic, but like I said, it's essentially a telescope mounted to a pair of glasses. And then we get into what we call wearable devices. So I'm going to break down the wearable devices into two categories. One are going to be considered artificial vision devices, and the second category is what we call ancillary. So artificial vision devices are kind of like those CCTVs and electronic magnifiers put into a pair of smart glasses. So they enhance your vision by making things larger and brighter and better contrast. So a few examples are like the eSight, the New Eyes, the Geordie. They range anywhere from 1 to 24x magnification. Their fields of view range anywhere from 37 to 101 degrees. Some of them do text-to-speech. Some of them allow you to stream television or video games directly into the headset, so you don't have to get right up on your television set if you're a video gamer. Some are wired, some are wireless. So the one thing I always tell people about when it comes to these headsets is that they're great, but they are still kind of heavy and bulky, and some of them get hot and make noises. And by and large, I don't really recommend anyone walk around with them on, just because it can limit your peripheral vision. So I wouldn't want anyone to put these on and have poor depth perception and bump into things or trip and fall and hurt themselves. But they're great for seated tasks. And you have to understand that the cameras on these devices are pointing straight out. And so you do have to bend your head down in order to see something, or instead hold the book or whatever you're trying to look at up a little bit higher. And again, these are just a few pictures of the different examples of technologies that are available out there in terms of artificial vision wearable devices. And we have pretty much everything out there on the market available for patient demonstration at the Duke Eye Center. So I'm going to switch back. So all of these devices are pretty expensive. What's happened is that these companies made devices from scratch. They put a lot of money into research and development. And then a few other companies decided, why are you making devices from scratch? There's tons of great technologies already out there on the market, like virtual reality headsets. How about you just turn them into a low vision device? And so now there's a few cheaper options, not significantly cheaper, but cheaper, that utilize a video gaming technology essentially to do the same thing. And it's a little bit lighter weight. It offers a great field of view, good contrast, and text-to-speech, just the same as the previous ones on the slide before. And then we have these augmented reality headsets, which they still have the little television screens inside that let you blow things up, but they're actually see-through, so you can potentially walk around in them. So they call them augmented reality because you're still able to see through them and see reality. So I kind of think about them as almost like heads-up displays, if anyone's familiar with those, and like the newer cars these days, where like the odometer or speedometer is projected up on someone's windshield. And then this is the second category of wearable technologies, which is what we call ancillary devices. So ancillary devices are not going to help maximize your vision, but they're going to help describe or read things to you. And so we've got OrCam, which is a little camera that sits on the side of a pair of glasses. And if you don't have a pair of glasses, they give you a fake pair of glasses to clip it onto. The OrCam can do text-to-speech. You can point at words and they'll read it to you. You can have it memorize up to 100 different people's faces. So if someone comes up at you, maybe at like 10 feet away, it may say, Mom or Linda from HR, so in a social gathering, if you have a hard time identifying who people are, you can program that person's face and it would announce them as they enter the room and you're looking at them, or as they come towards you. It also does barcode reading, so you could scan a barcode on a product and it'll read it aloud to you. The one thing I'll note here is that this device does not connect to the internet. So whatever products it has memorized, that's the only thing it can help identify. So it may be able to recognize like Heinz ketchup, but it may not be able to recognize like your Food Lion Great Value ketchup that you find at like Walmart. So maybe not the off-brand things. The OrCam is controlled through gesture. So like I said earlier, if you point at something, it can pick up where your fingernail is and try reading 3 lines above. If you look down at your wrist, even if you're not wearing a wristwatch, it'll tell you the date and time. So it's kind of a neat little technology. So that is the OrCam. And then we've got the Envision AI glasses, or I believe they're calling them goggles now. So it connects with your smartphone and it uses that smartphone app, but instead of having to hold the smartphone in your hand, am I running out of time, Janet? I'll wrap up soon. And so last thing that I want to talk about is neuroprosthesis, which that's if contrast is a $100 word, this is a $1,000 word. A neuroprosthesis is some type of implant which allows you to quote unquote see through the stimulation of your brain or other sensory organs. So we've got the BrainPort, which we don't have this at Duke, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but it's something that it's got a pair of glasses on a camera, or camera on glasses, and it takes a picture or video of something and it translates it into a tactile image, which is then imprinted on your tongue. And so people describe it kind of like a braille image or like a tactile image that's printed onto your tongue, so you would be able to identify what an object is. We don't have this at Duke because I can't have this going in and out of other people's mouth and keep that thing sanitary. So reach out to this company, BrainPort, if you're interested. And then we've got what we call the bionic eye, but it's technically called the Argus 2 by a company called Second Sight. And it works in the same way in that there's a pair of glasses with a camera. And what the camera does is it takes that image and it converts it using a small computer into a black and white image, and which is then sent to a small implant put on the back of your eye into the retina, and it would allow people who have no vision at all, total no light perception blindness, to be able to see black and white shapes. So you may be able to identify like a doorway or a window or a person standing in front of you, or finding a napkin on the table and going and putting into the trash can. So it can make a huge functional impact in someone who has had no vision for a long time. Now, they have stopped doing this because it was only qualified for people who have retinitis pigmentosa and a bunch of other kind of like qualification criteria, because it was kind of a narrow focus, and because this company has redirected their efforts into another technology, they're no longer doing this, but they are working on something called the Orion now. So it's the same company, and this is where all their efforts are going towards. So instead of putting the implant on the retina for just people with retinitis pigmentosa, now they're trying to work on putting the implant in the visual cortex of your brain, kind of similar to how a cochlear implant works for someone who is deaf or hard of hearing, where the hearing aid doesn't go in the ear, but it's kind of magnetized to the back of someone's skull. They're kind of trying to recreate the same thing except for vision. They're still very early on in the development of this, but it's great to know that there are researchers and people working on these type of technologies, and hopefully will be a future available in the future. All right, so I'm right at 10:50, and I'm just going to leave my contact information up here. So if you have any questions, certainly feel free to shoot me an email. My email is omar.mohiuddin@duke.edu, and for those of you who are listening in, I'll just go ahead and spell that for you. It's omar.mohiuddin@duke.edu, and then my office number is 919-681-9071. Again, that's 919-681-9071. I'm not always by my phone, but if you leave me a voicemail, I'll try my best to get back to you within a week. All right. Well, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm going to hand it back to...
I think it comes to me.
Yes, Greg, there you go.
Omar, that was incredible. It just makes you wonder what the technology will be in 5 or 10 years. And so thank you for the work you're doing. It's really amazing. So we're getting towards the end of our program. Last but not least, it is my privilege to introduce Cynthia Spate. Cynthia is the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Division of the Services for the Blind. And Mrs. Spate is passionate about the Division of Services for the Blind's mission to provide high-quality services that help blind, visually impaired, and deaf and blind individuals achieve their employment and independent living goals. She received both her Master's of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling and Bachelor of Science in Psychology from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So, Cynthia, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. I was asked to speak with you for just a few minutes about the fantastic services that we offer here through the Division of Services for the Blind. As Greg shared with you, we are a state agency within the Department of Health and Human Services, and our entire mission is to help individuals who are blind or have some severe limitations with their vision, we call it low vision, or who are deaf blind, become as independent as they choose to be and as engaged in their community as they choose to be, and also to develop a career path and achieve competitive integrated employment, and just to continue to advance in employment. So I said that in just a brief statement, but there's a lot of work that goes into, and resources and supports that goes into helping individuals achieve those goals. We are here in the state. We serve all 100 counties. We operate out of 7 district offices located throughout the state. We are in, we have an office in Asheville, Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Fayetteville, Raleigh, Wilmington, and Greenville. Our state office and our Raleigh office, as well as our Career and Training Center, are located here in Raleigh on the beautiful Governor Moorhead School campus. Our Career and Training Center is actually a residential facility. Our normal circumstances, individuals who require some extensive services actually come and spend time with us here on campus, where they stay for a number of weeks, going home on weekends and receive instruction every single day, and activities and classes in the evening as well. Out in the community, our vocational counselors help people create their career path. They can have vocational evaluations, job shadowing, internships, on-the-job training, college and university and vocational training, and of course, assistance with obtaining their jobs and getting the adaptive devices and assistive technologies and job modifications they need to be successful. In our independent living side of the house, where many of you may be interested in, we help you learn how to continue to live life as independently as you choose to, and doing the things you choose to do by learning adaptive techniques and utilizing assistive devices that we can introduce to you and assist you in obtaining. We also have, through our independent living rehab side of the house, daily living skill classes. Right now, we're doing them remotely, where we're bringing in small groups of individuals and teaching you core classes as a group. Individuals who participate in those classes really enjoy them, and they get just as much from each other as they do from our very skilled and knowledgeable instructors. And so I encourage you, if you are in need of our services, they are available to you as North Carolinians at no cost, most of them. And even the assistance with the adaptive aids and devices, there is some assistance to all persons for those as well. You can reach us. You can call 919-527-6700. And just let us know who you are, where you are, and what services you think you might be interested in. And then our staff will reach back out to you and begin the process. We typically, regardless of the program you're interested in, will need updated eye information. And by that, I mean you'll want to request a current eye exam within a year from your provider if you've already had that exam. If not, we would want you to get one so that we have accurate information about your vision, because it helps us help you in terms of your planning about services and resources we provide. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you very, very briefly. And if you have questions, I think I have 2 minutes I can answer them. Janet, I don't think there are any. So thank you, and you all have a good Friday.
Thank you, Cynthia. We appreciate that.
You're so welcome.
The North Carolina, I'd like to thank all of our presenters, Omar Mohidin, Cynthia Spate for this session. Thank you to our event sponsors, the Orchid Group at Morgan Stanley, and to our speaker sponsor, G. Suggs Insurance Agency. I'd like to acknowledge our advertisers, the Division of Services for the Blind, Springmore Life Care Retirement Community, and Disability Rights of North Carolina, the Senior Health Insurance Information Program also. I'd like to thank you for attending this webinar and hope you have enjoyed it. To learn more about the